I'm Anastasia Chatzka. I'm a fashion designer, pattern maker, and sewing educator, and I'm so happy you're here sewing along with me today. Do you want to design your own clothes? If you do, this video is for you. Designing your own wardrobe is so fun and creative. You can literally design anything you can imagine. And today is all about the sleeve. So the first thing we need to do before we start designing all of these fabulous sleeves to wear is creating the basic foundation sleeve, which is the sloper sleeve, which is gonna be a part of your sloper set. So you're probably gonna have your sloper bodice at some point, and if you wanna know how to make that, make sure you check out my video on it. But you can make this foundation sleeve without having the sloper bodice. By foundation sleeve, I mean a sleeve that is custom made for you with your measurements. It's gonna fit you like a glove. And we are gonna use this sleeve going forward to create all of our sleeve designs. So let's start creating it. Sometimes when we're pattern drafting, we need so many different measurements, but for the sleeve, we only need 4 measurements. So grab your measuring tape and I'm gonna show you exactly how to take all of them. The first measurement is going to be our sleeve length. So we're gonna be measuring from the tip of the shoulder all the way down to the wrist. And for this dress form here, it's going to be 22.5. Our next measurement is the cap of the sleeve. So we're gonna take the measuring tape, and we're gonna place it at the tip of the shoulder, and we come right down the side of the arm. But how do we know where to stop for the cap? Well, where is your armpit? So if you can take your armpit and then come straight over to the outside of your arm and take a look at that measurement, that is going to be your sleeve cap height. So for this one, we're gonna use 5 1/4. Our third measurement is going to be the bicep. So we're just gonna measure the biggest part of our arm here, and this could be different on different people, so just make sure you're measuring the biggest part of your arm, but ideally it is right under your armpit here. So we're gonna go ahead and measure this one, and we have 10 for this one. Next, we're going to be measuring the armhole. So if you're designing a sloper set, you're going to be using the measurements on your sloper for the armhole, but you don't have to just design this for the sloper set. It could be a sewing pattern you're working on right now, or maybe it's an existing garment that you wanna add a sleeve to. Either way, you're just gonna be taking the measurements from the armhole of the project that you're working on. I'm gonna be taking the measurements from my sloper bodice because I'm making a sloper set. When you do this, it's best to use a flexi ruler and not a measuring tape. You're gonna get a more accurate measurement. So we are just gonna line it up with the tip of the shoulder and then work our way all the way down to the bottom of the armhole. And when I do this, I get 7 3/4. It's a great idea to write it on your pattern so you have it for future reference as well. And now that that's the front, we are gonna go ahead and do the same thing to the back as well. You can start at the bottom of the armhole. You don't have to start at the tip of the shoulder, and just work your way all the way around and see what measurement you get, getting it nice and close to the edge of the paper. And this one ends up being 9 1/4. So now that I have the front and the back armhole measurement, I need to do a little bit of math to get the measurement I need for pattern drafting. So what we're gonna do is add those 2 measurements together, divide in half, and then add 1/4. Now that is going to be your special number for the sleeve for pattern drafting. And mine comes out to 8 3/4. People are always asking me, what pattern book do I like referencing? Well, I love referencing this pattern drafting book by Helen Joseph Armstrong. It's the one I used in college too, so you know it's a good book. You don't have to have the book to do this. That's also why I'm doing this, because it is really complicated in the book, but I like to break it down step by step so that way it's nice and easy. Because pattern drafting shouldn't be scary, but it can be very intimidating when you open that book and look at all those numbers and all those charts. What the heck does it mean? Well, I am here to simplify it for you so that way you can start designing your own wardrobe. So let's get pattern drafting. And this is so interesting, so make sure you don't miss a step. Okay, we're off to the races. So the first thing we need to do is draw down the length of the sleeve. So you should have your measurements written down. So mine was 22.5. So I'm just gonna take a long ruler and I'm just gonna mark at 1 and I'm gonna come all the way down to 22.5. So we have our sleeve length. I'm also gonna be labeling things with letters, following along through this book, so that way it is easy for you to understand. Even if you don't have the book, you'll have a reference. Next, we're gonna come down from A and we're gonna mark our measurement for our sleeve cap. And then mine was 5 1/4 here. So we're gonna come down 5 1/4, and this is the mark for our sleeve cap, and I'm going to label that C. Next, we are gonna measure from C to B and divide in 2. So 17 1/4 divided in 2. 17 1/4 divided by 2 is gonna be 8 5/8. So we are gonna mark that right here, and we are gonna label that D. Now what you need to do is grab your L square, and we are gonna square out from A, B, C, and D. So let's do it. And you're gonna do it on both sides of the line. I also want to point out that I'm using a red chunky marker so that way you can see, but when you're doing this to get precision, you should be using a pencil. Now that we have all of our lines squared out, we are going to use that armhole measurement. And for me, that was the 8 3/4 mark. So what we're gonna do is take a ruler and place it at A, and we are going to pivot it until 8 3/4 is on the C line. And this second line here down is the bicep line. So 8 3/4 right here. So we are going to put a mark right there, and then we are gonna draw from A up, and this is that 8 3/4. Now what we're gonna do is take this line that's 8 3/4 and we're gonna divide it in 4. So what we're gonna do is put a little mark at all of those little spots. So for me, that's gonna be 2 3/16. Okay, now my line is divided in 4 here. I'm gonna label it G, H, and K. Now what we need to do is continue drawing our bicep line over here, but how do we know how far to come out? Well, what we're gonna do is measure from C to E, which is 7. I'm gonna come over here and measure 7 as well and put a mark. I'm gonna label this mark F. Now I'm going to draw a line from A to F, and I'm also gonna divide in 4. So I'm gonna have the same thing here, so I have 8 3/4. So I'm gonna be marking down 2 3/16. I'm going to be labeling these L, M, and N. If you're enjoying pattern drafting a sleeve so far, make sure you subscribe to Sewing Anastasia and hit the notification bell so you know when all my new videos come out. And if you're already a subscriber, thank you so much for following along. We are already half done, can you believe it? Stay tuned and I'm gonna sew this muslin up and try it on the dress form, and let's see how it fits. Next, we wanna measure our C to E, which is 7, and we wanna minus 2 inches so that way we can draw the opening of our sleeve. So for me, it's gonna be 5. So we want to mark 5 out from the center line on both sides. There we go. So now we have an opening for the bottom of our sleeve here, and we can label these O and P. Now we're gonna draw the sides of our sleeve. So we are gonna go from E to O, and we're gonna go from F to P. You can really see this sleeve taking shape. Before we start shaping the sleeve, the book recommends that we draw some measurements in and out from G, H, and K. So for G, we're gonna come down 3/8 of an inch, and we're going to put a mark here. H is gonna be 1/4 inch outside of this line, so right here. And K is gonna be 5/8 outside of this line. Okay. L is gonna be 3/4 outside of this line. M is 3/16 outside of this line. And N is 1/2 inch in. So make sure you're putting these measurements in on the bottom and out on the top too. And now what we need to do is take 2 French curves, or you can use 1, and we want to match up the French curve with these little marks that we've put here. And then you can go ahead and draw them. And now for the bottom one, we flip it and go the opposite way. So we're coming in down here. So you can see that shape of the sleeve cap that's taking place now. So same thing up here. Okay, now we have the cap of the sleeve drawn. You can go back with your rulers and really smooth this out. I usually like to cut it out roughly and then flip the paper over and smooth it out a little more to make it nice and smooth. Now that we have our sleeve drafted, what we want to do is walk our bodice pattern onto the sleeve cap to see how much ease we have in the cap, because we don't want over 1.5 inches of ease up there. So what I'm gonna do is take the front of my bodice and walk it on the front of my sleeve, and the back of my bodice on the back of my sleeve here. So this here is the back, and this is the front. Also, my sloper that I'm working with right now has no seam allowance on it, and the sleeve that I have here right now also has no seam allowance in it. So it's really important that if you're walking something with seam allowance, that you add the seam allowance to the pattern or vice versa. We also want to mark our notches for the sleeve. So what I like to do too is I really want this portion right here for the sleeve to match up. Just like the first few inches at least. So if I've got this on here and it doesn't look like the curve is matching, I'm going to draw a new curve on there. And then I'm going to blend this curve into the existing curve that I drew on there. And so now I'm going to use that line to follow it, to walk. So my notches would be right there. I'm gonna keep walking. Okay, we are right there for the tip of the shoulder. And now I'm gonna walk the front. So that one's lining up really nice, so I don't need to worry about reshaping that one. That worked out great. We're gonna put our notch mark here, and then I'm going to keep walking. We've got a mark here. So we want to make sure that our sleeve cap ease is under 2 inches, 1.5 inches. That's really important because you don't want to be easing that much fabric into the sleeve hole. So let's measure our portion here to see what we have. And it looks like we have 1.75 inches. So we can work with that measurement, easing that into the armhole. Or if you want, you could also make that measurement smaller. Totally up to you. Really depends on what kind of things you're going to be creating. But for the muzzle and sloper, if I'm sewing this up, I'm okay with 1.75 inches and easing that in. That's gonna ease in no problem at all. One last thing you wanna do is add seam allowance. We are gonna add a 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way around this pattern. There we go. So now we have a 1/2 inch everywhere around the pattern, and we can go ahead and cut it out and take a look at it. There we have it, our beautiful sleeve. It looks great on the back side where you can't see all those crazy red marks that really add a lot of chaos to it. But if we turn it over, there it is. We have our sleeve and it looks awesome. We did it, we finished it, and it was so easy. It took like, what, 10 minutes? No big deal at all. Now the exciting part, I'm gonna sew it up real quick and we'll try it on the dress form and see how it fits. We did it. Here is our sleeve that we pattern drafted, and there's just one quick seam in it. This one just has the underarm seam since it is the basic sloper block. It is looking great. I ran a few basting stitches in it just to cinch it in a bit around the armhole so you can see how nice this sleeve fits, and you can really imagine it being sewn into the bodice. So now, since this is just our foundation, we can start making all kinds of awesome sleeves, which I am so excited about. So we can start pattern drafting our hearts out till they're content. So today we took some measurements, we pattern drafted a sleeve, and then we sewed it up. And guess what? It fits like a sleeve. It was that easy to do. So next time you want to make a really awesome sleeve that fits one of your garments, try this method because it's super fast and easy to do. Just follow along step by step, and I guarantee you, you're gonna have a sleeve that fits. Yes, a sleeve that fits. Do you believe it? So if you're really into the pattern drafting, you want to make sure you check out my other video on pattern drafting the sloper bodice, so that way you can put the sleeve on it. And then coming up, I'm going to be doing the skirt as well, so that way I've gone through the whole series of the entire sloper dress. So that way we can start pattern drafting some more really awesome stuff, and we'll have references to all the sloper bodice and sleeve and skirt videos, so that way everyone can follow along and start pattern drafting and designing their own wardrobe. So exciting, right? I'm super excited about this. I would love to know, what kind of outfits would you like to see pattern drafted? Because sky's the limit, and well, you know, maybe my style that I want to pattern draft isn't what you want to see. So I would love to know what you would like to see pattern drafted coming up in the future. Leave it down below in the comments. Thanks so much for watching Sewing Anastasia today on pattern drafting the basic sleeve. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below and I will get back with you as soon as I can. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up, give it some applause, and leave that comment down below because I'd love to know what you thought of the video. And if you have any tips or tricks yourself, leave those down below for everyone else to read. Also, don't forget to follow me and hit that notification bell so you know when all the new videos come out. And if you're already a subscriber, thank you so much for following along. And don't forget to add me on Facebook and Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter, all those social media websites. I can't even spit them out. So go ahead and add me on all of them so that way we can stay connected and creative together. And I would love to see your projects and share them with everyone else, so make sure you tag me in them or send me photos so that way I can post them and keep everyone else inspired and creative. And if you have any questions at all about anything sewing related, feel free to leave it down below in the comments. And don't forget, I teach sewing classes in my design studio in Chicago. I teach them in person and virtually, so check those out at sewinganastasia.com. And don't forget, we now have merch, so check out the merch down below as well. Have a great day. Bye.